Hi everyone, it's Nicki and I am back with some more top 10 and I'm sticking with a literary theme today. A couple of months ago we did our 19th century top 10, so today I thought I would do my 20th century top 10. This is another quite difficult one because obviously it's a pretty broad area. There's so many books from which I could choose my top picks, but I have narrowed it down and I will share them with you now. So at the top of the list, number 1, Ulysses by James Joyce. I read Ulysses at university and I loved it. It is completely pretentious, I do admit, Joyce is completely showing off in this book, and you know that and you just accept that and move on because it is so clever. I mean, the way he changes literary style through the different episodes, I find that fascinating, and I like the way he's adapted the original Greco-Roman story. So yeah, it's a fascinating study of a kind of almost postmodern, I guess you'd say, literature. And you may not like Joyce, you may think it's too much, that he's just showing off, but at the same time I think you have to appreciate the achievement in the book. Number 2, Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I really love Milan Kundera, I love all his work. I picked this one because it is one of my favourites. It's probably one that you guys will be more familiar with. Even if you haven't read it, I think a lot of people know the title. There was also the fairly interesting film version they did, which, whether successful or not, I'll leave up to you to decide. But the thing I love about Kundera's work is he really gets inside your head, and often when I'm reading his stuff I'm thinking, wow, I felt like that. I really understand the way he's presenting this character because it's me. I've had the same thought, and I love that. It really brings an immediacy to the story because you identify with it so strongly. Number 3, Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I enjoy Kafka's work on the whole. Metamorphosis is my favourite. I love the sort of parable, of fairy tale almost nature to the piece. The way it says a lot of things in this gigantic metaphor, essentially. And I mean, his work's very political in some ways, but I think you can read it in a lot of different interpretations, depending on your own views and background. Which is one of the things I find fascinating about him. Number 4, Embers by Sándor Márai, which I hope I'm pronouncing right. Apologies if anyone speaks Hungarian and can correct my pronunciation of the name, please do so. Hungarian, as you would expect from my comment there, a Hungarian author. And his works are gradually starting to become a bit more available, some in English, others in German. I've read a few. Embers was the first one I read and it's still my favourite. He has an incredibly atmospheric style of prose. It's beautiful, brilliant, beautiful prose, and it really draws you into the setting, to the scene, to the moment. If you haven't read any of his works, I do recommend them. They tend to be fairly short, short novels, but they're just gorgeous. They're really, in some ways, they're slightly claustrophobic because they really kind of draw you into this intimate scene and this intimate story. Number 5, Bulgakov's Master and Margarita. This is really a major 20th century classic, I think. If you haven't read it, check it out. There's witches, there's all sorts of really exciting things, talking cats. If that kind of thing interests you, check out this book. It is both incredibly funny and yet at the same time quite dramatic. So it's more modern Russian literature, not quite as verbose and heavy as something like Tolstoy. So maybe if you're interested in trying Russian authors but you're not quite ready for Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, maybe try Bulgakov. Number 6, Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. I've always loved Rebecca. I love it in all its incantations, or incarnations, I should say, sorry. As a book, as a film, as a musical, as a stage show. There's something about the story that really appeals to me. that sort of sense of gothic mystery, I guess. You've got another hero. I mean, I often think of Maxim in the same way as I think of Mr. Rochester. They're both a sort of slightly dangerous and yet really appealing Byronic hero, or anti-hero if you like. Number 7, High Rise by J.G. Ballard. I like Ballard's work, I like Crash as well, but High Rise is the one that really stuck with me. It's such an interesting commentary on society for the time, and probably for now still too as well if you read it in a slightly different way. It's a really claustrophobic piece. You're kind of drawn into this limited world of the high-rise building, and as events gradually escalate out of control. I mean, I was so excited when the film came out with Tom Hiddleston, and I liked it in many ways. However, I was a little bit let down because I thought it didn't work for people that haven't read the book. Reading the book, I could fill in the gaps, but there were a few times, particularly near the end, where it suddenly jumped events well into the future. Whereas in the book, there's a slightly slower build-up towards, you know, the big climax at the end. I felt that in the film they kind of had a really slow start, but then suddenly got to the end. And if you didn't know the book, my husband watched it with me and he's never read the book and he was completely confused. So I don't think it was entirely successful, although there were plenty of things I liked about it. But the book is really worth reading, both as a social commentary and just as a sort of really intense psychological read. Number 8, Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. Murakami is, like Milan Kundera, one of those writers that I simply adore because I always feel like he's talking directly to me, that he's created this character that reflects me and things I've thought and felt. All his books are like that. I picked Kafka on the Shore. I mean, I like most of them. I almost picked Norwegian Wood, but at the end of the day I went for Kafka on the Shore. I think it's slightly more accessible than Norwegian Wood. So that's probably one to start with if you're going to try Murakami's work. Number 9 is Sigrid Undset's Kristen Lavransdatter. Now this is a really epic, it's about this thick family story, Scandinavian, set back in the past. So it's historical fiction, Scandinavian historical fiction, and it's about the sort of saga of this family, all based around the character of Kristen. It's really beautifully written. I mean, the characters are so engaging, the plot just keeps you turning the page. If you haven't read it and you enjoy historical fiction, I really recommend it. Finally, Somerset Maugham's Of Human Bondage. Somerset Maugham, I'm really keen to read some more works. I've got several on my book depository wish list that I'm just waiting till someone buys them for me, or until I get a bit of money for birthday or Christmas, you know, maybe this year, and I'll get a couple. But Human Bondage is another story that I felt a really personal connection to when I read it. I was really excited to read it and I just got sucked in right from the start. And as with all these books, I'm trying not to tell you the plot too much, just in case you're going to go off and read them. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm just trying to describe them in very general terms. But I found it a very emotive piece, a great psychological study, and one that certainly really caught my personal interest and held it. So those are my top 10 in 20th century literature. Like the 19th century, you know, if I wrote this list 2 months from now, it's possible it would change depending on what mood I was in, what was going on with me at the time, what books occurred to me that maybe didn't come to mind when I sat down and wrote the list to do this video, because there are so many great works out there. But for now, at least at the time of filming, these are my top 10. Tell me yours. Pop some comments below. Are there any that you would pick that I've included in my list, or are there some other ones that I haven't mentioned that you want to give your thoughts about? Pop them below and I'll look forward to reading them, and I'll be back next time with another top 10 video. Bye for now.